Good morning and welcome to the Morning Market Call. I'm your host, Janessa Cloward, and this morning we have with us Tim Hart, a regular here on the Market Call.
Indeed.
And Tim's here to talk to us about a new stock recently acquired in the Silver Fund, Partners Group.
That's right.
So what is Partners Group?
So Partners Group is a global fund of funds, private equity fund of funds. They're based in Switzerland. They're a global leader in that arena of private equity fund of funds. Interesting though, they're not only doing these primary investments in other funds, but they're also doing direct private equity investments as well as being involved in the secondary private equity market.
Would you mind explaining what the difference is between a primary, a direct, and a secondary investment?
I would not mind that at all. Glad you asked. So, direct investment, that's if the company, Partners Group in this case, is taking their own capital and investing directly in a deal, whatever that deal might be, and it could be an equity deal, an ownership stake in a company. It could be a debt deal, where they're lending to the company or taking ownership of a tranche of debt, or it could be a real estate deal. There's a lot of different types of deals that they do. They're also now getting into infrastructure, private infrastructure deals, electric grids, water rights, etc. So direct is you're putting your own capital directly in, whereas a primary, I guess it's still your capital, but you're giving the capital to somebody else to invest in their fund. So Partners Group then goes out and finds some other private equity fund that they like, give them money, and then that other fund actually finds the deals to do directly. So that's a primary investment. And a secondary would be, okay, you or somebody else has already given money to a private equity fund. That money is starting to be invested, and then for whatever reason, someone needs to get out. Usually that's a liquidity concern or a rebalancing issue, maybe that a pension has. A pension fund might have an asset allocation model that calls for 15% of the overall portfolio to be allocated to private equity investments.
Right.
But if some things start underperforming and outperforming, that 15% can quickly start to look like 20 or 30%, especially when we get the stock market crashing. So the stock market used to be 50% of a portfolio. That value drops by 60%.
Right.
And now, even though nothing's changed with the private equity valuation, it suddenly represents a large percentage of that portfolio. So that pension needs to get out. Well, how do they get out when private equity deals usually have a 5 to 10 year tie-up? They're illiquid investments. So a secondary market emerges where you can sell your share in that fund on the secondary market to someone else who has the liquidity to invest. And then that gets broken down, and this is what Partners Group is really good at, is creating a relative value grid that's divided by geography, and it's divided by direct versus primary versus secondary, and it's divided into different tranches within each of those, whether it's venture capital or LBO or special situations or debt or equity or real estate, brownfield real estate, greenfield real estate. They have, so they're doing across this grid where's the most value, and they're also they have a. Now we're kind of getting into the second piece of this, which is why did we invest in Partners Group, and it really has to do with that relative value grid and the liquidity that Partners Group had to invest during 2009. A lot of the players in that marketplace simply were not able to invest. They had their own liquidity concerns. Not only did the pension funds have liquidity concerns, but the private equity funds themselves in many cases had liquidity concerns. They were getting people trying to cash out of the deal. They weren't receiving new inflows of cash. It was very difficult to raise more money. Partners Group didn't have that problem. They raised a lot of money. They had money to invest. And what happens is in private equity, there's what's known as the vintage year. I don't know if you've heard that phrase. That's the year in which a fund is invested, is its vintage year.
Right.
And so historically in the industry, when you look at where are the best returns industry-wide for private equity, it's for those funds that have a vintage year where that year was a year of recession or of economic downturn, because you're able to enter at lower earnings multiples,
Right.
and you typically are able to gain more control and have more influence over improving operational efficiency. So 2009 looks to be a great vintage year for Partners Group. They were able to make a lot of deals. 13 direct investments that they did in 2009. So we're excited about that. They're also expanding very rapidly. I'll let you ask a question now. Sorry.
No, you're just fine. Actually, we're out of time for today, but
Great.
thank you for that great explanation, and we're excited to see how Partners Group performs in the Silver Fund. Thanks for being here today, Tim.
All right, thank you.
The Morning Market Call is a production of the Marriott School of Management at Brigham Young University and is made possible by generous donations from Larry Kashjan and Gary Williams. This webcast was produced by Greg Lee, Tim Hart, Julie Kellett, and Jonathan Marucci.